Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to Lyotard's theories about postmodern media. This is not a set theory on any exam board, but I like to use this theory when studying postmodernism, particularly when teaching the CIE exam board for the postmodern topic on the second exam paper. Jean-Francois Lyotard was a French philosopher and he had a lot of ideas about postmodernism. One of his first major discussion points was that he thought that postmodernism was an incredulity towards metanarratives. And so it's important to understand what a metanarrative or a grand narrative is, because they're interchangeable terms. Metanarratives or grand narratives are those narratives or stories or ideas that are most commonly accepted as being conventional, normal. So there might be a meta-narrative, for example, about young people being kind of aggressive and lazy. This meta-narrative might be perpetuated by traditional media products like newspapers.
There can be meta-narratives about stories and fiction as well. So, for example, there's a commonly held meta-narrative that fiction stories should be linear in nature and have a beginning, a middle, and an end, preferably in that order.
Postmodernism, according to Lyotard, is this idea of incredulity, i.e. disbelief towards those meta-narratives, which basically means that postmodern texts, in Lyotard's mind, tear up those meta-narratives and destroy them, and they can kind of create different or new narratives that challenge those old ideas. And he calls these localized or micro-narratives. Because more people can have their say, we have this plurality of voices. More people can contribute their ideas, more people can make films, more people can distribute YouTube videos or upload their own citizen journalism. It means we're getting lots of small micro narratives rather than one big meta narrative created by the news, for example. So I'm going to use a non-fiction and a fiction example to try and explain this to you. So within the non-fiction example, if we take the death or murder of George Floyd, a few years ago now, George Floyd was murdered by police in public, and the meta-narrative that was created by newspapers and broadcast news at the time, in conjunction with statements given by the police, was that George Floyd was being aggressive, that he'd committed a crime, and that they were legally restraining him and his death had been an accident. That was the meta-narrative that had been created. And what happened was, a 17-year-old girl called Darnella Frazier came along, videoed the incident and uploaded her own version of what happened to show what she had seen. And this is what Lyotard might have thought of as being a micro or a local narrative. It's Darnella Frazier's own personal viewpoint of what happened, because it was from her mobile phone camera footage. And it showed a completely different perspective. It showed George Floyd being illegally restrained, refused medical treatment, and some quite, horrifying behaviour from the police officers. So we started to get this plurality of voices, which brought together a much more honest picture of what actually happened to George Floyd. So it was these micro narratives all came together online to destroy the meta narrative that had been tried to be communicated by the traditional news.
The film Jojo Rabbit is a good example of a product that challenges the meta-narrative about both Hitler and the Nazi Party in general by portraying Hitler as quite a sort of silly, comic, quirky, imaginary friend, and by portraying at least some of the Nazi Party in quite a sympathetic manner. The Netflix TV series Kaleidoscope challenges the meta-narrative about how programmes and narratives are actually supposed to work. We often think of there being a linear narrative with a beginning, a middle and an end in that order, whereas with this series, audiences can choose the order of the narrative by opting to watch the episodes in any order they see fit.
Now, with a fiction example, if you think about a meta-narrative, the typical way of doing things, in a music video, the typical way of doing things is that you don't see the camera, you don't see the green screen, the costumes are supposed to be super glamorous and everyone's supposed to look like they're having a brilliant time, and the effects are going to be very high budget and you're not going to notice all the behind the scenes stuff. You don't see that stuff in a media product. That's the rules, and that's kind of part of a meta-narrative. It's the rules, it's the way things are done. With a postmodern media product, if you look at something like I Don't Care by Ed Sheeran and Justin Bieber, they break the rules. They create their own mini kind of micro narrative that stomps all over those rules. They show the green screen, they have dodgy camera work, they have weird editing going on, they have people looking a bit bored, they have people dressed in dressing gowns. You're seeing behind the scenes, you know, the sets and the edges of the lights and things. It's completely breaking all the rules that you would normally have in a media product. And so it's really challenging those meta-narratives of production. Lyotard also talks about the fact that there is no objective truth or facts within the media. And I guess that's part and parcel of everyone being able to create their own pluralistic micro-narratives. It very much agrees with Habermas in this respect. The idea is, I suppose, that Lyotard thinks we can't trust anyone or anything because there's no such thing as an objective truth. He also believes that postmodernism is not just a historical time period. He thinks that you can't just think of it as a kind of issue that has been around since the kind of mid-20th century. He thinks that things like uncertainty and relativism have always existed, and that actually we're just beginning to put a name to it. So that was my kind of very simplistic guide to Lyotard and his ideas about postmodernism. Don't forget to check out my channel for other theories that might be relevant to you.